Right. So today we're gonna be diving into Bulgarian history.
Okay.
But not the typical stuff you might see in a postcard. We're going way deeper.
Yeah.
And we're going to be looking at the Turkic roots of Bulgaria. So using historical accounts and some excerpts from scholarly articles.
Sounds fascinating.
Yeah, and honestly, it's way more intertwined than you might think. So if you're interested in the Balkans or cultural identity or even just how surprisingly things can be connected, stick around. So
Well, it's interesting because we always look at history as sort of a straight line, but Bulgarian identity is anything but. It's actually this vibrant tapestry with all these, cultural influences. And the Turkic influences is a really big part of that story.
yeah, and to kind of set the stage a little bit, we're talking about the 7th to 9th centuries.
Mm-hmm.
And we have these two distinct communities in what is now Bulgaria. So you have the Turkic Bulgars, and they were these nomadic horse-riding warriors. And on the other hand, you've got the more settled Slavic communities. And it's almost like a cultural collision, waiting to happen.
Yeah, and it's often portrayed as this, conquerors and the conquered. But sources like the history of the Turkish community in Bulgaria, they paint a more nuanced picture, actually.
Yeah, it wasn't just about who was in charge. I mean, these communities were completely different. They lived in separate territories, worshipped different gods. The Bulgars had Tengri and the Slavs had Perun. And they even had contrasting burial customs, which I thought was really interesting. So the Bulgars, they practiced burial while the Slavs favored cremation.
It really was a complex kind of process of, cultural negotiation and integration. Imagine merging two companies today, with two different cultures and ways of doing things.
And messy.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, and things eventually start to blend by the mid-9th century. And it's not just intermarriage that's driving this,
There were some key players and events that really pushed things forward.
Yeah.
For example, Khan Krum, he enacted laws that essentially replaced the separate legal systems of the Bulgars and the Slavs with one code for everybody. And that was a major step toward this unified society.
Yeah, and then Khan Omertag comes along.
Yeah.
And he completely revamps the administrative system. His reforms streamlined the government and really chipped away at the old federal system that kept the Bulgars and the Slavs separate.
Right.
He was really laying the groundwork for a unified nation.
And then you've got, of course, the Cyrillic alphabet, developed by the students of Cyril and Methodius.
Now that's a game changer. Greek is out, and Slavic is now the official language of the state. This wasn't just practical; it was, it was a symbolic of a new national identity. And even the name Bulgarian, which initially referred to the Bulgars, now represents everyone.
Exactly. Yeah, it really helps solidify that shared Bulgarian identity.
So we've got this new identity emerging, but what happened to those original Turkic Bulgars? Did they just disappear?
That's a great question. Well, not necessarily. There's this theory that some Turkic communities actually persisted. They, held on to their culture, their language, even after this rise of this unified Bulgarian identity. And centuries later, they might have even merged with the Ottoman Turks. It's like a hidden layer.
Yeah, it's like peeling back layers of an onion. Each layer reveals something new and interesting. And in this case, it really, challenges the idea that they just vanished.
It's definitely a more complex story.
So speaking of adding layers,
yeah,
let's talk about ecumens.
Yeah.
Now, we know they were allies with the Bulgarians.
Yeah.
But how deep did that connection really go?
Well, our source, Cumans and Tatars, actually, it reveals a surprisingly deep connection. The Asin, Turdur, and Shishman dynasties. In the Second Bulgarian Empire, they were all of Cuman origin.
So we have rulers with Turkic backgrounds leading a predominantly Slavic Christian Bulgarian state. That's wild.
It really is. It just shows how history is rarely that simple. It's messy. It's fascinating,
Yeah, and then just when you think you can't get any more interesting, the Ottomans arrive. But this isn't the story of cultural destruction that you might expect.
Right. The Ottomans were they were surprisingly tolerant, especially compared to other empires at the time. And our sources show that. Bulgarian culture and Christian faith were largely preserved, even protected under Ottoman rule.
That's so interesting because, a lot of people have this image of the Ottomans as being oppressive.
It's a common misconception. The Ottomans had this diverse empire with, all these different faiths and ethnicities, and they recognized the value of allowing people some autonomy.
This is really making me rethink. You know how I thought about the Ottomans? Seems like history is always
It always is.
way more nuanced than we initially think.
The Ottoman period in Bulgarian history is a great example of that.
So, just to recap, after centuries of coexistence, what happens when Bulgaria becomes a nation state?
Well, sadly, with the establishment of Bulgaria as a nation state in the late 19th century, we see this tragic turn of events, ethnic cleansing and assimilation campaigns targeting the Turkish population that had coexisted with Bulgarians for centuries.
It seems like a complete betrayal of,
Yeah.
this long history.
It's a tragic and ironic consequence of nation building.
This whole deep dive has been really eye-opening. We've seen how Bulgaria's history is a testament to the enduring legacy of its Turkic roots. From those early nomadic encounters to the later dynastic influences, the Turkic thread is just woven throughout. It shapes everything from, political structures to cultural identity.
And we've also seen those hidden layers, right? Like the role of the Avars in paving the way for the Slavs' arrival and that fusion of Byzantine Christianity and Slavic traditions.
It's a reminder that history is rarely, a simple, straightforward narrative.
Yeah.
It's a complex tapestry
That's for sure.
of influences and unexpected turns.
Mm-hmm.
And we've barely even scratched the surface here.
There's always more to uncover.
It's like we're piecing together this giant puzzle.
Yeah.
And each piece reveals, a new layer.
A new layer of complexity.
Challenging our assumptions and really enriching our understanding of Bulgarian history.
Yeah, it really is a giant puzzle.
So to really understand how these Turkic Bulgars become the Slavic Bulgarians that we know today, we have to talk about Christianity.
Right. Yeah, it wasn't just a simple change of faith,
Yeah.
this conversion to Christianity had a huge impact on Bulgarian identity.
It seems like it was more than just changing religions. Like it had a deeper significance.
Yeah, and you got to think about Khan Boris, he's the one who decides to convert in the 9th century. And it wasn't just a personal choice. It was strategic. It had all these consequences.
So it sounds like Boris was playing the long game here, aligning himself with the Christian world.
Yeah.
Would have given him, legitimacy and stability.
Absolutely. It was a very shrewd political move. But it also had this cultural impact. Suddenly you've got all this Byzantine influence coming in. Churches are being built. Greek clergy are arriving. And they're starting to Christianize the Bulgarian population.
So did Bulgaria just become,
Right.
a puppet of the Byzantine Empire?
Not exactly. Boris wasn't content with just being under their control. He wanted an independent Bulgarian church.
Okay, now we're getting to the juicy stuff.
And this is where things get really interesting.
So what did he do?
So there was this division, right, that emerges between the Eastern and Western churches, the Great Schism. It was this power struggle between the Pope in Rome and the Patriarch in Constantinople, each one of them claiming authority over the Christian world.
So Boris is kind of playing both sides against each other.
Yeah, he was. He was smart. He appealed to both Rome and Constantinople, looking for recognition, for his authority and for an autonomous church. He was like a chess master, using the schism to his advantage.
And did it work?
It did. The Byzantines, they were worried that Bulgaria would fall under the Pope's influence, so they eventually gave Boris his autonomous church.
That's a huge win. What was the long-term impact of that?
I mean, it solidified Bulgarian independence, and it paved the way for this distinctly Slavic Bulgarian culture to really,
to blossom. And that's where the disciples of Cyril and Methodius come in.
Exactly.
The missionaries who had been expelled from Moravia.
They found refuge in Bulgaria, and they brought with them their Slavic liturgy, and they helped create this uniquely Bulgarian Orthodox tradition. It's this fusion of Byzantine Christianity with Slavic language and culture.
So they help forge this new hybrid culture that blends the East and the West, and this new identity. It not only survives, but it thrives during Ottoman rule.
It's pretty incredible.
Wait, hold on. You're saying that that Bulgarian culture and Christian faith flourished under Ottoman rule. I thought the Ottomans were a Muslim power.
They were, but the Ottomans were remarkably tolerant rulers. Especially compared to other empires at the time, they generally allowed their Christian subjects to practice their faith and maintain their traditions.
That's so unexpected. I think a lot of people have this image of the Ottomans as, as being oppressive and intolerant.
Yeah, it's a common misconception. In reality, they had this diverse empire,
Yeah.
with people of all these different faiths and ethnicities. And they saw the value in allowing their subjects to have a certain degree of autonomy.
This is really challenging how I thought about the Ottomans. It seems like history is often way more nuanced than we initially think.
It always is. And the Ottoman period in Bulgarian history is a perfect example.
So remind me again, after centuries of coexistence, what happens when Bulgaria becomes a nation state?
Well, sadly, when Bulgaria becomes a nation state in the late 19th century, we see this tragic turn of events, ethnic cleansing and assimilation campaigns targeted at the Turkish population, the very same population that had,
Right.
coexisted with Bulgarians for centuries.
It's heartbreaking. It seems like such a betrayal of, of that history of coexistence.
It really is. It's a deeply tragic and an ironic consequence of nation building.
It seems like the drive for this homogenous national identity often comes at the expense of diversity and inclusivity.
Yeah, and unfortunately, that's a pattern we see throughout history.
This whole deep dive has been a real eye-opening experience. We've seen how Bulgaria's history is a testament to the to the enduring legacy of its Turkic roots. From those early encounters to the later dynastic influences, the Turkic thread is just woven throughout, shaping everything from, political structures to cultural identity.
And we've uncovered those hidden layers too, like the role of the Avars and the fusion of Byzantine and Slavic traditions.
It's a reminder that history is rarely a simple story. It's a complex, a fascinating tapestry of influences and unexpected turns.
Yeah, you're right.
History is full of these plot twists, and the more you dig, the more you find.
Exactly, and I think what we've seen today with Bulgaria and its Turkic roots is just one example of how multifaceted history can be.
It really challenges the idea of those clear-cut narratives, especially when it comes to national identity.
Right, national identities. They're not these homogenous or static things. They evolve over time, shaped by so many different factors.
So, thinking about everything we've uncovered today, what's the biggest takeaway for you? What really stands out?
I think for me, it's the reminder that history isn't just a collection of dates and events. It's this dynamic process shaped by countless interactions between cultures, and often those interactions are more nuanced and surprising than we might think.
Yeah, it's like we need to constantly be questioning our assumptions and be open to the unexpected. Otherwise, we miss out on the richness and complexity.
Exactly, and I think that's what makes history so fascinating. It's a constant process of discovery and reevaluation.
Yeah, it's been a wild ride. We've gone from nomadic encounters to cultural mergers. We've explored religious transformations and even uncovered some surprising dynastic connections.
And it's all connected to this thread of Turkic influence that runs through Bulgarian history.
We've seen how those roots have shaped everything from political structures to cultural identity. And it's a reminder that Bulgaria's story, like so many national narratives, is way more complex than we might think.
So to anyone listening, if you ever think that history is just a bunch of boring facts and figures, remember Bulgaria. And its Turkic roots, remember those layers? The unexpected connections and the constant interplay of cultures.
It's a reminder that the past is full of surprises, and there's always more to uncover. And who knows, maybe you'll even discover some aha moments of your own.
Keep digging, keep questioning, and keep exploring.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Yeah.
Until next time, keep those minds curious and those explorations going.